Picture it, a narrow British street in the 1950s, lined with terraced houses and the faint rattle of milk bottles at dawn. Children in short trousers and scuffed shoes chase a football made soft from rain, while mothers call names from doorsteps, firm, familiar voices that ruled without question. There was order in everything then, from the way we greeted neighbors to how we folded our hands at the dinner table. Childhood had a structure, an invisible handbook quietly passed from parent to child. You didn't need it written down, you simply knew. There were rules for speaking, standing, and even for silence. Today, those rules feel almost mythical. How many of them do you still remember or dare admit you ever broke? The Britain of the 1950s was a country rebuilding not just its streets, but its spirit. The war had left behind rubble and ration books, but it had also carved deep lines of discipline and duty into everyday life. Families were determined to restore order, not just in their homes, but in their hearts. Respect wasn't requested, it was expected. Schools ran like clockwork, with teachers who believed in firm voices and straight backs. Churches filled each Sunday, not from habit, but from hope. Mothers kept kitchens immaculate, fathers polished shoes before work, and children learned that obedience was a kind of love. Freedom as we know it today was still a distant idea. Back then, structure felt safe, and those unwritten childhood rules were simply part of surviving a world learning to stand tall again. Every British child of the 1950s lived by rules no one ever wrote down. They were as natural as breathing, passed through tone, glance, and habit. To break one wasn't rebellion. It was unthinkable. These were the quiet laws of childhood, the codes that shaped a generation long before mobile phones, microwaves, or modern leniencies softened the edges. At home, it began the moment you woke. Beds were made with hospital corners, pajamas folded neatly under the pillow. A tidy room means a tidy mind, mothers said, and we believed it. Breakfast was never optional. You ate what was served and you never dared say you didn't like it, unless you fancied going hungry until tea. Plates were cleared, crumbs brushed away, and everyone thanked Mum as though she'd cooked for the Queen. At the table, manners were a language of their own. Hands on your lap. Chew quietly, ask before you leave. Every clink of cutlery carried meaning. The father's seat was the throne, and the look, that silent piercing stare, could correct more behavior than a dozen words. Today we scroll through screens while eating. Back then, the only distraction allowed was the ticking clock on the mantel. In school, rules were sharper still. Speak only when spoken to was gospel. Silence wasn't punishment, it was discipline. Children became experts in reading moods. The slam of the register, the tap of chalk, the tightening jaw of a teacher who'd had enough. Punishments were swift, but so was forgiveness. One stern word, one slap on the desk, and the matter was over. No complaints, no emails, no parent-teacher meetings. You took it on the chin, learned the lesson, and carried on. Dress codes were strict and symbolic. Shirts tucked in, shoes polished, hair combed neatly. Even socks mattered, no holes, no excuses. Pride in appearance was pride in self, long before the phrase became fashionable. At home, shoes stayed off unless guests arrived. Only then did the slippers vanish, the carpet glistened, and the good biscuits appear, a subtle performance of respectability that told the world, we may not have much, but we have standards. Society itself had its Sunday rhythm. Sunday was sacred and everyone knew it. The streets were quiet, shops shuttered, and children were reminded that play could wait. Hymns filled the air, roast dinners simmered, and even the wireless seemed softer. It wasn't repression, it was ritual, a shared pause that stitched the week together. And then there were the rules no one spoke aloud. If you fell, you got up. There was no fussing, no tears for long. A scraped knee was a badge of honor. Don't answer back, mind your elders, don't make a scene. These weren't constraints, they were lessons in restraint. Back then, rules shaped us. Today we negotiate them. Yet beneath the strictness was a kind of quiet love, a belief that order kept the chaos at bay, and that good manners might just make a better world. To understand those childhood rules, you have to understand the people who made them. Our parents and grandparents had lived through war, blackouts, and ration books. They'd seen chaos up close, and order became their safety net. Structure wasn't just about manners, it was about survival. A tidy home meant control in a world that once felt uncontrollable. Predictability meant peace. Teachers, too, carried the same torch. They'd served in uniform or grown up during the Blitz, and their classrooms echoed the discipline of the parade ground. Churches reinforced it every Sunday, reminding families that good behavior wasn't just proper, it was moral. Respect for elders, deference to authority, and silence in the face of hardship were virtues carved by experience. To modern eyes, it can look strict, even harsh. But to them, these rules weren't cages. They were the scaffolding that rebuilt a wounded nation, one polite, well-behaved child at a time. But order never lasts forever. By the late 1960s, a quiet revolution was humming through transistor radios and record players. The Beatles sang of freedom, miniskirts defied modesty, and do as you're told began to sound old-fashioned. Suddenly, Color flooded the black and white world of our parents. The old certainties wobbled under the rhythm of Top of the Pops, and children started speaking, not waiting to be spoken to. Schools softened, voices grew louder, and individuality replaced obedience as the new ideal. By the time the 1980s rolled around, the phrase seen and not heard had vanished, replaced by express yourself. The rulebook hadn't been thrown away, it had simply been rewritten, one guitar riff and cheeky grin at a time. And though many parents sighed at the noise, deep down they knew the silence of their own childhoods had finally been broken. Looking back, it's easy to smile at those rules. The polished shoes, the Sunday silence, the endless thank yous and excuse me's. They could feel stifling, yes, but they also built something rare, a sense of belonging. We learned patience by waiting our turn, gratitude by earning small rewards, and respect by understanding that effort mattered. In today's world of convenience, some of that quiet strength feels lost. We move faster, speak louder, and expect more, yet we often miss the small courtesies that once stitched communities together. Still, not all was left behind. The best of those values, kindness, humility, and resilience, linger in how we raise our own children, even if we don't realize it. The past may seem strict, but it gave us something lasting, the ability to stand tall, even when no one's watching. So here's the question. If you could bring back one rule from your childhood, which would it be? Maybe it's saying please and thank you without fail, or Sunday dinners where everyone sat together. Maybe it's the simple pride of doing things properly, even when no one noticed. Picture it, the cobbled streets, the mothers chatting over fences, the clink of milk bottles in the dawn light. Those small rituals made ordinary days feel safe, connected, and human. We may not live by those rules anymore, but perhaps, deep down, we still miss the quiet order that once held our world together.